Welcome to the Mental Health Boot Camp podcast.
Hooray.
This is the podcast where 4 mental health professionals, 3 of us from Canada, 1 of us from America, serve you cutting edge mental health knowledge. I am Dr. Ryan Howes, a clinical psychologist from Pasadena, California.
And I'm Dr. Brooke Lewis, a registered clinical counselor from the Greater Vancouver area.
And I'm Joanna Boyd, a psychotherapist from Port Moody.
I'm Chris Boyd, psychotherapist from Port Moody.
Welcome, everybody. And allow me to express my condolences to you members of the Commonwealth at the passing of Queen Elizabeth earlier today.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes, she definitely lived a long life.
96
96 and
Incredible.
70 years as
Queen.
queen. That's remarkable. Did you ever watch the Netflix show, Ryan, The Crown?
I did watch the first season, I believe. All the way through
Yeah.
the first season where she became the queen.
Yeah.
I think I dropped off my radar after that, but it was really good. It's good stuff.
I think it was a very well done show, and I personally learned a little bit more. I know that it's obviously not completely accurate, but there are definitely accuracies in it, and learn more about how that all operates and the royal family and how she became who she was. And I think they did a great job with that show. For any listeners who haven't seen it, it's just a slower paced show. So a heads up on that.
Yes, The Crown. Very good acting though, and beautifully shot and all that. Good show. But okay, so we got to talk about this, the royal family thing here for a second, because
Complicated.
it's complicated. And I don't need to go, I'm not asking about the whole history of it, but as far as how it's viewed here in the States, we look at the royal family, or a lot of people look at the royal family as like, wow, it's actual, it's kind of throwback to the old age with queens and kings and Disney princesses and the whole thing. Like it's a very kind of fantasy based or fanciful sort of thing, and there's the controversies that come up, and it's always in the tabloids and all of that sort of thing. But I wonder what is it like as Canadians? You are part of the Commonwealth. The Queen had come to visit, and other royals come to visit you guys once in a while, and that sort of thing.
Mhm.
But you're a separate country, but you're still kind of with like, how does that all work for you guys?
Don't think much about it.
Yeah, I know.
I honestly, it doesn't. Yeah, it doesn't
Impact our
come up.
daily
It doesn't
lives.
Impact our daily lives.
Isn't she
Yeah,
on your
I-
money?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But who uses money anymore,
She's on your.
Well, and middle names. My middle name is Elizabeth,
Mine
after
too.
the Queen.
Oh, I don't know
After
if
the
mine.
Queen?
I don't think mine's after the Queen.
After our grandma?
Yeah. Oh, I don't know. No, I don't know.
Yeah, I think she's still the figurehead of our country, technically.
Yeah.
But it's like symbolic.
Yeah.
They don't really have any control over the day-to-day operations of our country. We have Governor General, is that the right term?
Sure.
Who represents the Queen in Canada, but again, a figurehead position. So she may check some boxes when it comes to the transfer of power in our government and whatnot, but not really much power or say in the day-to-day operations of our government or lives.
So when Trudeau became prime minister, then
Yeah.
she had to like sign a box and say, yeah, that's fine. Yeah, okay, that's fine with me. Like,
So like
To formalize it, I think. Yeah, there's
'cause-
probably a decree of some sort.
yeah, Great Britain, they have a new prime minister now, and so Boris Johnson had to go and ask the Queen to dissolve the government. Then the new prime minister had to go and ask for permission to form a government. So Trudeau would do the same with the Governor General, I think it is, in Canada. But she's not going to weigh in and say, no, you can't do that. It's just a symbolic type of position.
Yeah.
There's controversy because I forget what her name is right now, but often they rack up a lot of money and they travel in private planes around the world and represent Canada
Yeah.
and the Queen. And so often there's little rumblings about that. Is it really worth having these figureheads anymore? You know?
Mhm.
Well, yeah, because it does seem like it's symbolic, you say, and kind of a figurehead thing. There's no actual power there. I mean, I guess what's the value of having the British seal of approval on stuff for you guys anyway? Because
Yeah.
you're not beholden to them, you know?
Yeah. So Westminster, like Britain has no control over what Canada does. We're a sovereign country. They
Yeah.
kind of gave us our sovereignty. We didn't win it like you guys did. But Canada is way more diverse than it was before. So we had some really strong British roots and French roots. But I think we're a very different country today. So I bet you anything, with Queen Elizabeth passing away, as time goes on,
There'll be
I think
discussion.
there's gonna be more discussion about maybe ending the figurehead. Just my take on it, but I don't
You
know.
heard it here first,
Yes.
everyone. You heard it here first. Canada secedes again from Great Britain.
Yeah, they're out. But yeah, I think a lot of Canadians, I think some have a bond to Queen Elizabeth. And
Yeah.
obviously 70
Mhm.
years, it's a long time.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure if they have that same connection to King Charles III.
Mm-hmm. I know here, and again, I think it's mostly for just like I keep saying like fantasy reasons, but it's like people put a lot of idealization into the whole royal weddings and the baby being born, and people still talk about Diana's death here.
Yes. And I think they do here as
Yeah.
well. Like, I think that was
There's
just
so much around that.
yeah, exactly. So much around it. But
Yeah.
I feel like it's very similar. Like it's more of a symbolic family or role or what,
Yeah.
what people are watching or taking away or,
Yeah.
mm. Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, figurehead.
Yeah. That's really interesting stuff, I think. I mean, just the way that, like, the sociology of it all, like how Americans view it one way, but we have absolutely no tie. But you guys view it probably a little different way. I mean, seeing her picture on your money that you apparently, according to Chris, don't use anymore. That's significant.
Mhm.
For sure. Yeah. And in traditions, like,
Mhm.
For instance, legally, it's the crown it represents the government, right? Or the legal
Mhm.
side of things. Crown land, like we still use a lot of those terms a lot, right?
Hmm.
So you think government or federally owned is
That's a good
technically
point.
crowned. Yeah, so I think there's still a lot of influence there, but
Huh.
I don't think people think of the Queen or
We have the
royal
holiday.
family too
Never
often,
mind.
right?
You know, Queen holiday. No?
Yeah. But I think the Queen was technically the commander in chief of our military too. But again, figurehead, right?
Yeah. Wow. Well, interesting. And I know that for the next couple of weeks or maybe months, there's going to be a lot of news coming out of Great Britain with the whole transferring. I mean, I guess he's already king, but they're going to have to make it official, and a lot of ceremonies and a funeral and a lot of different stuff going on here, probably. So,
Oh, big
Mhm.
time.
And then coronation after that, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, will the Canadian flag be flown at half mast?
Probably already is.
Probably already is.
Yeah.
It is, yeah.
Parliament, yeah.
Yeah. Actually, I would wonder if ours are. I mean, in DC at the Capitol, maybe. Significant person. Yes. Well,
Yeah, I think a lot of people speak very favorably of her. A lot of heads of
Absolutely.
state, and her temperament, and obviously very intelligent woman. And
She's kind of a boss lady, right?
Yeah.
She liked her hunting and her
Horses?
horses and
Corgis?
dogs and
oh yeah, I haven't heard hardly anything negative about her at all.
yeah, in the last 70 years have been pretty tumultuous.
Yeah, a lot's gone on.
So for her to navigate through that, it's
Yeah.
not been easy, right? A lot of really difficult situations there.
Mhm,
So it's come out of it looking pretty good.
mhm.
Yes. The rest of her family, there's some, plenty of scandal to go around there, or at least tabloid fodder, but not much about Elizabeth. She's always been pretty solid.
Yeah.
Mhm.
For sure.
That's cool. Well, the queen is dead. Long live the king, I guess, right? Isn't that that's how the saying goes?
I
Yes.
guess so.
Yes. And also, by the way, the other piece to this is the monarchy, right? I mean, there's the next three are looking like males, at least for Britain. And to have a woman in that seat as queen for 70 years, I guess it's unprecedented. And there's gonna be a lot of kings going forward. So
Yeah.
it's interesting.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I should note too, there are some people out there that are not super fond of the monarchy and imperialism. And I was reading a book on an indigenous chief up here in Canada, and he calls the RCP the Queen's Cowboys, and talked a bit about the history there and their depiction of how they've been treated. So
You said what were the letters you said there?
the Queen's Cowboys. So the police officers,
RCMP.
RCMP, our
Royal Canadian Mounted Police.
Mounted
Yeah.
police, right?
basically the police. Yeah.
Yes.
So he calls them the Queen's Cowboys, and
Ah.
talked about his take. I guess he doesn't represent all Indigenous people, but
Sure.
and the treatment from the crown over the years. So not all sunshine and rainbows for everybody, but I think for us, our take on it is pretty positive.
I'm sure some mounted police still do use horses, right?
Yeah, is it sometimes ceremonially, right? Like you'll in the summertime in downtown Vancouver, there's these big firework display things. It's a competition between countries. So 3 countries compete, and then the finale. So it's only 4 nights of fireworks. And there's, I don't even know. I'm gonna say 400,000, 500,000 people that all crowd down on the Vancouver beaches to watch these firework displays. There's a lot of people just kind of like horde down there. So in that type of event, then yeah, you'll see some of the police on horses for that. The riots, there was like the SWAT team and the people on ground, but there were also horses.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we-
So big crowd events, not unusual,
Sure.
but not at everything. Like the police aren't just riding around on horses.
Right. And we have that sometimes as well. Or some police will be on horses, but it's kind of a novelty. But just the mounted police, it's part of the name, right? I guess at some point they mounted vehicles. So, all right. So, yes, very sad news, but it will be a big part of the news cycle for a while, I'm sure.
Yeah, I think so.
So it's great to be back and here, able to serve up cutting edge mental health knowledge with you guys again. Do we have a topic for this evening?
We do.
Uh-oh.
We do. Okay, good. And that's Brooke.
Woo!
All right,
Are you
Brooke.
guys ready? Are you feeling it?
Curveball Brooke. Come on.
Are you ready for the ambush?
Let's do it.
Send
Ready.
it down. Brooke knows the question. The 3 of us don't. So what is it gonna be?
Beep.
We will see. Okay.
We haven't actually done this yet.
We haven't. This is a good one. Okay, everybody. Here's the topic. Eating disorders. What are they? Can you have an unhealthy relationship with food without an eating disorder? And I'll add to that, how do we treat it? Like how do we,
Yeah.
what do we
Just
do?
kind of
with it?
general.
Right?
I was
Yeah.
gonna say just unhealthy relationships with food, and we can go
Mhm.
from there. But yeah, like relationships to food, eating disorders, like that whole realm.
Disordered eating.
Disordered eating versus eating disorder. All of
Wow.
it's kind of mushy, right? Like how do you know when it's getting into trouble zone? What do you do? and what types of treatments are there, and yeah.
Very, very good topic, Brooke. I'm surprised we haven't tackled it yet, and a very
Yeah.
serious topic
Yeah.
in that, as you guys I'm sure are aware, eating disorders are actually the most lethal of disorders that people have.
They are. Do you know why, Ryan?
Do I know why? Because no, I don't know why exactly. I mean,
Yeah. So it's more specifically, it's anorexia.
yeah.
And what happened, so I took a short little course. It was called the Medical Management of Eating Disorders through local college here. That was many moons ago, but and it was more medically based, medical management, obviously. So what happens with anorexia is during the refeeding process, the body goes into shock. It's actually from the potassium, and you go into cardiac arrest.
Oh, so it's actually the healing or treatment of the eating disorder in that process that people can
Or
actually.
in oopsies, even, let's say this person just maybe hasn't been eating very much at all, and then what they did end up choosing to eat that day had too much potassium for the body, can send them into cardiac arrest.
Wow. Yeah. And I know the body kind of reaches almost a point of no return at some point. Like,
Yeah, there's
Like-
a lot of physical, and there's a big controversy around that of, are eating disorders actually a medical issue, not a psychological issue? Because there's so many physical considerations.
Yeah.
What's happening for like internal medicine in the body.
ooh, this is a good topic.
Yeah, I think I've like kind of steered away from it because it's kind of like a area some people know and some people don't know, and it's
Okay.
not a general knowledge. But I think we all have worked with persons who have an unhealthy relationship to food,
Certainly.
or where we've questioned, like, is this going too far?
Yeah.
And had those conversations. So
Mhm.
It's a complex topic because, as you said, there's maybe biological components. There are a lot of people who look at the psychological components of it. It has, different approaches to treatment, and yeah, there's a lot to cover here. So we're gonna make this a 3-hour podcast.
yeah, this can be part one. Like sleep hygiene, we'll do another one.
Maybe not. Let's see what we can do here.
Yeah.
So I guess we could start with defining, like, DSM wise, like, what are eating disorders? What are
Like
they?
the current ones, and
Yeah.
SIBO? I feel like you might be.
Yeah, I think you're probably the
Best
best
to
one to
actually
break it
define it.
down.
but
Yeah.
or just what some of them are called.
Sure.
Oh,
Yeah, or anorexia, you mentioned bulimia.
Binge eating disorder,
Yeah.
and another that I don't know if this is actually an official diagnosis, but orthorexia.
Yeah, that's unofficial for sure. And then there's like, I don't remember if it's still called EDNOS. So EDNOS is eating disorder not otherwise specified. And then there's ARFID, avoidant restrictive food intake disorder. So previous to this DSM, it would have been like picky eating. But ARFID is like a refusal to eat certain foods because of textures, and different tastes, and can be very, very restrictive for people.
I don't really like mushrooms. So is that ARFID?
No,
No. Okay.
I think you would be a lot more extreme. Like you would very little be rejecting most things based on.
And not the nicest sounding acronym either.
ARFID.
ARFID.
Can you
And-
quickly say what orthorexia is?
So orthorexia,
Let's go back. Let's actually go back to the beginning. We'll go to anorexia. What's that?
and do you guys want me to go, or do you guys want to
Yeah,
go?
go ahead, Brooke.
Okay, so anorexia nervosa, the acronym, like it would just be AN, you would see it like that a lot. And so that's characterized by typically low body weight, restrictive food, an intense fear of fat or gaining weight is paired in there. I forget what else, other requirements. Your losing menstruation is in there. And I think there's a body mass index requirement where it drops below a certain thing as well to meet the criteria for anorexia. There is an anorexia type 1 and a type 2. So off the top of my head, for whatever reason, I can't remember which one is which, but I'm pretty sure type 1 is just like straight anorexia. Type 2 is you're restricting your food intake severely, and then you actually like binge and purge, but it's not typical binge purge behavior. And that one, that's actually where you're getting really dangerous, because the body is starving, so it's trying to eat, and then the body goes into shock and can go into cardiac arrest. So it's like a mix, but it's characterized by this intense low weight, restrictive food, intense fear of fat or gaining weight. Loss of menstruation for 3 months or longer. Yeah.
Okay, interesting that you mentioned that a couple times, because of course half the population doesn't menstruate. So but this is a disorder that has been seen more often, although not exclusively, but more often with menstruating people, and less so with the non-menstruating female, male, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or that's just one of them. So when, and I think we've talked about this in other podcasts, but how these DSM diagnoses work is, if you look it up, there will be like 8 different criteria, and it will say that the person needs to meet 5 of the 8.
Right.
So men wouldn't be meeting the menstruation one, but they might be meeting these other requirements.
Sure. Yeah. Which there are people who have some difficulties with the DSM format in the first place, but that's for another podcast. So how about bulimia? Oh, good. Chris, you got something?
So what's the prevalence then for females versus males? So my understanding is it's more prevalent with females, anorexia.
Yeah, but whether or not that was because, like, were they testing males?
Yeah, good point.
And same with, there's like a misconception. So like I said, it's meeting a certain number of criteria. So somebody, or it's more aware of now that someone can still be struggling with anorexia without being like, where their body hasn't reached that level of thinness. Because they're
gotcha.
still, their body is actually still holding the weight, but they're not eating, they're starving themselves. They're in a crazy caloric deficit. It's been going on for a long time. If it's a woman, maybe they're not menstruating. There's an intense fear of gaining weight.
So not all individuals will be
a certain body size. Yeah. It's often that a person with anorexia is going to be very, very thin, but not always.
Is there body dysmorphia typical with that as well? Okay.
What's that?
Kind of, my understanding, just seeing like you see your body differently than other people would see it. So you might be like, just look in the mirror and what you see, you might think there's different parts of your body, or I'm not thin enough or small enough. But when, logically speaking, you would actually be quite small. So you just mentally, your image of yourself is askew.
Yeah. And that can go flip, like maybe not where you see yourself bigger than what you are. And sometimes for persons who are like bodybuilders, they see themselves as smaller than what they are. Like they think they need to build more muscle when they're already very muscular.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So I broke a rule and I cheated a little bit, and I did a prevalence search here from the National Institute of Mental Health. The lifetime prevalence of eating disorders. So this is the chance that someone will have an eating disorder in their entire lifetime across the population is 2.7%. So 2% of all people may have an eating disorder at some point in their life. But for females, that number is 3.8%. And for males, it's 1.5. So women are twice as likely to have an eating disorder at some point in their lifetime than males are. So just a little something there. I don't want to get too into the weeds and the stats here because we're just having a conversation, but I just thought I'd throw that out there. Okay, so what's bulimia?
I don't know a lot of the stats about it, but you essentially you would be purging after you eat. So technically you'd be eating, and then there's a common thing where you would be throwing up your food afterwards. Is that a for sure marker of bulimia?
The purging?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. I just didn't. Yeah.
Purging can also include things like laxatives or really strenuous working out.
Yeah.
There you go.
It's another way to burn those
Competition
calories
behavior.
off, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And often characterized like with some binging as well.
Mm.
The binge purge
Yeah.
cycle kind of thing.
Binge purge cycle. And a binge, so a binge is also not super clearly defined, but a binge is when a person eats more than what would be considered like a normal amount of food in one sitting, but to a point where they have a sense of loss of control during the process, and where afterwards they feel physically uncomfortable from the amount of food that they ate. And so all binges don't look the same. Some are really super intense for people, and other times they're less intense, but that loss of control is really important. So there's almost like a dissociation that can happen during that time.
Mm.
And then with the physical discomfort, then that's where the purge comes in, where it's not always about the fear of gaining weight from consuming the calories, but it could just be that the person physically, the body actually physically needs to rid some food.
And this is where the emotions come in oftentimes too, I think, or from what I've seen. Like it's someone is they're upset, they're feeling distraught about something, and they, grab the bag of chips or a bucket of ice cream or whatever it might be, and just kind of boom, boom, boom. And they feel like you said, kind of compulsive, like I can't stop. I just got to keep going. And it's some people would theorize that it's like a distraction measure, a way to kind of distract yourself from those emotions, or to try to soothe those emotions. But physically they're not feeling it, but emotionally maybe it's working.
Exactly. Which is the next, like another one is binge eating disorder. So that would be somebody who binge eats without the purging. So, and then there's like the tricky line of like, when is it emotionally eating versus when is it binge eating? Because it's very common for people to feel emotional and eat. Emotionally eating is a thing, but binge eating would typically be an excessive amount of food
So
paired with a
more
loss of
extreme.
control.
Oh, okay.
And again, that's going to be different for everyone.
We have
No.
one of those every Thanksgiving. We have one of those where people eat until they're absolutely stuffed, feels uncomfortable, but the food's so good. But it's not, the difference being that there's something, oftentimes it's secretive, or it's something that's being done as a response to an emotional issue that comes up or arises, right?
Mm-hmm.
I've certainly eaten until I was uncomfortable.
We've
Yeah, I
all
think we all
overeaten.
Yes.
All overeaten, and that does not mean it's a disorder, right? And that's why it's an important thing to talk about. I mean, we all need to eat. We eat every day. We eat multiple times a day. We want to have a healthy relationship with food. Sometimes we feel full. Sometimes we have sweets because we're happy. Sometimes we eat them because we're sad. Whatever. Like it's to normalize it. It's not that it's necessarily a bad thing, but we want to watch out for when it does become a problem.
And that's one of the most challenging parts of eating disorders for people, is that we do need food. And I mean, people often will distinguish it from like drugs and alcohol. Like you can just abstain, or not just, but it's not that easy. But if you abstain from drugs and alcohol, your life will go on. If you can pass the withdrawals and the cravings and all that kind of stuff. But you can't abstain from food if you're a binge eating person, right?
Oh.
You still have to eat, but you have to find that moderation, that place, and a different way to manage your emotions, right?
Yeah. And same with other tactics, or let's compare that to alcoholism. So, okay, you have a problem with alcohol. You don't go to pubs anymore. You don't go to the liquor store anymore. you have a problem with binge eating, you still need to get groceries.
Yeah.
You're going to have to face the triggers of the peanut butter aisle. That one's a very, very common binge eating food, peanut butter.
Huh.
And you're still going to have to go down that aisle. So what are you going to do about that?
It's tough.
Yeah, and drive by the hundreds of different fast food joints and pizza parlors.
Sure.
Yeah, or the treats in the office.
Mhm.
Our office has lots of treats in the kitchen, at least. or-
Not lately, actually.
No.
Yeah.
Well, and what do we do when we want to socialize? We say, hey, let's go grab lunch. Let's go have dinner. Let's go eat something together, right? It's
Yeah.
such a common part of human connection is the sharing of a meal experience, and that
Absolutely.
can be problematic for some folks.
Yep.
Yeah.
Do people tend to binge just the unhealthier foods though? Like are there folks
Yes.
out there that binge healthier foods? I'm assuming that's uncommon, but how?
I think you would
uncommon?
have to, I don't know what you're going to mean by healthier foods. Like, I don't think it's very common for someone to binge eat like a Costco bag of carrots. Like that's not going to happen,
Mhm.
but people might binge by ordering takeout
Yeah.
and large quantities of takeout. So maybe the individual dishes wouldn't be like eating out isn't always the healthiest, but that's not necessarily like candy bars or chips or
Yeah.
whatever. It might be, they might order 3 adult meals and eat it all in one sitting.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, I'm just trying to think if I feel like would someone be hard on themselves for eating a bag of carrots and be like, oh, there's a lot of guilt or shame involved with this versus certain foods that would maybe bring that on? Like, is that part of it? I don't know. Because yeah, you're right. You don't hear about if someone says they're eating only a ton of
Yeah.
healthy food, you'd be like, ooh, there might be an issue there. Whereas if they're eating a ton of unhealthy food, tends to be more the case.
Yeah.
Okay.
I had a friend who said that she decided to go on a carrot only diet and she started to turn orange.
Yeah.
There's a negative consequence. I
Oh,
don't know if
man.
that's true or not, but that's what she
We know
said.
someone who just ate a tremendous amount of celery and eventually the body reacted intensely to it.
Mm.
To stop that, but
Really?
yeah.
Is that
I'll ask
Carol?
questions later.
Tell us more.
No,
Because there was like the big like juicing of celery was like huge, like
Yeah.
a
So I
few
think
years
it
ago.
still is. Yeah.
Like it was like a thing. Anyway.
I think there's a reason why the fatty and sugary foods are a little,
Because they
Well,
give
they're
us
more
that
savory.
taste, and they give us that.
yeah, it releases neurochemicals. But I also think from over the course of evolution as well, those foods were a little more rare to eat, right? Sure. So you're more likely to eat more of those and binge on those because you weren't having it every day. You didn't have the same level of accessibility to those types of foods, right? Whereas now you can find them anywhere and everywhere.
It's true. That's true. And it feels like a special treat to the body, right? Whether it's the fatty stuff or the sweet stuff. And it's like, oh, this is a special occasion.
Yeah, it might be more seasonal or occasional.
Yeah.
Then it's back to other staples that you would probably eat on a daily basis.
Yes.
Swinging back to whoever asked to clarify orthorexia, Joanna. So orthorexia is a preoccupation. We've been talking about binge eating and more like consumption of food, but the other side is this like intense fear of gaining weight, the anorexia stuff, and orthorexia falls into that too. So orthorexia is a proposed eating disorder where it's a preoccupation with eating restrictive, healthy, naturally occurring foods with like an obsessive kind of tendency to with this restrictive quality of only eating pure natural foods. And a twist to it, because when it first came out, I was like, so all of Vancouver, like there's so much of like healthy, natural, organic, everything. But there's like what was the word that they used? Like I'm better than you situation involved in that for persons with, or that's part of the criteria is saying I'm a better person than you are because I am eating in this way. Like
So
I'm
you're
more
being judgmental?
holy, or there's like an ego piece to it. Like I am more pure than you because I am eating this way and you are not. So I am better.
Mm,
Like
got it.
there's a piece of that in there as well. But and that's where I get caught for unhealthy relationships with food, when people, I don't think we should be demonizing any food group by any means. I think moderation is key to life and we don't want to demonize foods. But then we hear about these very restrictive food programs that people decide to go on, whether it's paleo or keto or carnivore diet, or when there isn't a basis for your body. So obviously if you have an intolerance to dairy, don't eat dairy. I get that. But otherwise, why are we demonizing eating a potato? Why are there so many people that won't eat potatoes? I can't eat potatoes, so I'm one of those unlucky ones. But why are they so scary? I don't get it.
Mhm.
That's unfortunate. You can't eat potatoes. They are,
A nightshade. Boo boo. Or if you were to take a look at, I don't know, naturally occurring grains, so oats or rice, and how some plans, meal plans, if you don't have a medical condition, why are you not choosing to eat those foods? Like what's the fear there? What's going on? Like if oats are good,
Mhm.
rice is good.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
sure. It's also a tremendous amount of information out there. Like, obviously we're not dietitians, but nutrition does impact your mental health, and we
Yep.
got to be aware of these types of disordered eating. So I can go down the rabbit hole and have a decent grasp in terms of what is healthy for the brain and body. You know, they talk about it. We met at the symposium, and often there's one or two presentations on that. And I swear, a month or two after, there's information that comes out that contradicts that information I just learned.
Yeah.
So it seems like it's a constant. There's just so much info. Yeah.
And I genuinely, I like to know the purpose behind it for people when they jump into those types of changes in life. If you're going to decide to try keto or paleo or whatever, what is your purpose behind that? Is it aesthetics because you want to lose weight? Or is something else going on where you are out of breath when you're climbing the stairs, you're not sleeping well, you have sleep apnea? If there's skin issues, is there diabetes? What is going on that's prompting this change? And if it's only because you want to change your aesthetics, I think that's, for me, a flag to say what's going on here. Like, is there something more beyond this?
Certainly. Yes.
Is this
So-
health oriented or body oriented?
Well, and that brings us to the both psychological, interpersonal, and sociological pieces to this, right?
The why.
The why, right? Why does this happen in the first
Okay,
place?
why?
And I think one we'll just go with the low hanging fruit here. One place that at least when it comes to the restrictive eating or the binge, the bulimia, oftentimes people point to societal standards, right? Like the ideals for society, the people we see in magazines and on TV tend to be slim and slender. And so a lot of people say, well, in order to be good enough or desirable or attractive or whatever that might be, I need to be thinner. So I will restrict the food that I'm taking in so that I can become a thin person. And people, often talk about that, or people who were teased as a kid for being a little overweight, decide, well, I'm going to take control of that. I'm going to not eat anymore, or I will eat in front of people, but I'll throw up in the bathroom afterwards so I don't actually take in those calories. And the sociology of this, the social psych parts of this tend to be, people focus on that quite a bit, don't they?
Sure do. Yeah, the social cultural piece. But then you also mentioned the experiences too, influenced by comments or bullying, or even a lot of family dynamics, right? I had a client, I saw a male last week, and he has a bit of body dysmorphia and really fixated on certain elements of his body, his stomach, but we're doing some EMDR, and it went back to certain experiences there, being very judged, and comments that were meant to be funny, but he really took to heart, and would actually, there's a turning point there where he would not take his shirt off anymore going to the lake or ocean, or not just a towel to even cover the top part of his body, just because he was so fearful of what the family members would say, right? So the experiential piece is huge, but trauma as well, right? Like trauma is a big factor when it comes to eating disorders, for a number of different reasons, but I see that that's often a factor there.
Mhm.
So even self-hatred and not hating your body, or just a sense of control, right? Feel that your life is out of control in lots of different ways, then this is one thing you can control.
And that's what I hear, and that's something that some people feel it's a little controversial, but just in my clinical practice with some people who have struggled with particularly anorexia, the challenge, the issue that they had is like, okay, I'm growing up in this household. I don't feel like I am in control of my bedtime, or I have to do good at school. I'm being controlled as far as my social life is concerned, or whatever that might be. But here's something I can control. I can control whether or not I eat, and that's a big drive or has been a big drive for a lot of the folks I've known with struggling with anorexia. It's like, I can control this. Maybe I can't get my parents to give me a compliment, but I can control how much I weigh. And so that becomes this one area. And that's one of the things that makes this such a challenging issue to treat, because it's like, I've found this thing that I can control, and I'm successful at it, and no one else can stop me from it, right? No one can make me or force that food down my throat. So I'm winning, while at the same time I'm kind of destroying myself.
Yeah, except for it, doesn't always, somebody can actually force food down your throat, because there is a point where you become hospitalized and then you have a feeding tube.
Yeah, and I've worked in those hospitals and had the people, walking around the hospital with the feeding tube going down their nose, intubated through their nose down their throat with Ensure or some sort of high protein food. Sometimes they pull it out, sometimes they don't like it, but yeah, that can be like doctor's orders right there.
Sometimes it's straight into the stomach as well.
Mm.
Not even down, straight to the tummy.
Yeah, those are extreme circumstances. Yeah.
Yeah, very, very, very extreme. But yeah, it's also so kind of jumping a little bit in the treatment part, anorexia is definitely one of the most difficult disorders to treat, because without the nutrition from the food, the mineral, like for the brain, the vitamins and the minerals for the brain, the person's not able to think rationally or clearly. Like, so the rigidity of their thinking and the obsessiveness of their thinking increases, and it's very, very hard to pull them out of that. So it's a strong catch-22. Without the proper nutrients, the brain's not actually able to do the work to get themselves out of it.
Yeah, it's true.
And so then it becomes more entrenched.
So if I remember correctly, the neurotransmitters were released in our brains that, like serotonin and dopamine and whatnot, that help us feel calm and happy. They come from amino acids from food, right? So if your diet is not healthy, then it really does impact your mental health and your cognitions, your ability to think clearly.
Well, your brain's on survival mode. How's it supposed to do any other capacity, right?
But even a lesser extent than that, like a lot of clients I meet who they say, oh, I feel really anxious or uneasy or agitated. And then you look at their diet and
It's off kilter.
Yeah, off kilter for sure.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of research out there about just, gut health,
Oh,
gut mind, and Yeah, connection, right? So if you're what you're putting into your gut and the health of your gut will impact, you could, yeah, our
Yeah.
emotional health, mental health.
Yeah, the gut biome. Yeah,
Yeah.
lots of research coming out on that. Pretty interesting stuff,
I
right?
guess we did our book review one time on,
On the one book, yeah.
yeah, you look back, I forget what the book was called, but a lot of that, yeah, mind body connection there, or mind gut health connection.
This
I
is
forget
your
what it's
brain on
called.
food. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
What was it called?
This is your brain.
This
on
is
Food.
your brain on food.
Yeah. Yeah.
But,
Yeah. I mean, if you wake up in the morning and your first thing is a Red Bull or a Monster energy drink or something like that, then you go and have a high carb lunch, and then you have potato chips for dinner, you're probably not working at full capacity after a few days of that, right?
Which is, so just on that note too, so that if that is a normal diet for someone, or if they're eating more than that, just tapping into obesity. It's interesting. Obesity isn't really, that's medical, but there's, I think, huge psychological component to it. Probably some binge eating disorders or other eating disorders in there. Often persons who struggle with obesity are malnourished
Interesting.
because they're not eating nutritious, they're not eating enough nutrient dense foods. Often the foods that they are eating are high in calorie but low in nutrient. And so often persons with obesity are malnourished.
Because you're seeking out, your body seeks out more of the nutrients, and so you'll just eat more and more and more,
Exactly.
but it's not actually nutritious, so you just end up eating these empty calories, huh?
Exactly.
Interesting.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Intermittent fasting is a really big thing right now. There's been a lot of more research coming out on that. There's some TED Talks on it. So I'm kind of curious to get your takes on it. Obviously, we're not dietitians or medical doctors, but there's some really interesting research coming out. So any comments on intermittent fasting?
Oh man, I personally don't know enough about it. I know people in my life who do it and they really like it and it benefits them, but I don't know exactly. Yeah, I know you have to be careful around your time of the month if you're a woman, because you could potentially you're losing a lot of blood through your menstruation, and you have to make sure that you're getting adequate food. But yeah, I don't know a lot about it.
Yeah, I'm not too sure on the research either. But as with all of the diet things that are out there, intermittent fasting, keto, paleo, carnivore, whatever else there is, there's probably more out there.
Hundreds, I'm sure.
Yeah, all of these different things. Or Atkins, remember when Atkins was a big thing?
And vegetarian and vegan, like they're all part of this, right?
Vegan. Well, unless you have a reason, like obviously a medical reason to,
Yeah.
or moral
Yeah.
Sure.
for vegan, vegetarian as well. Disclaimer on that one. But
Religious, yeah.
what it comes down to for me is rigidity, right? Like, so if you are intermittent fasting, we always have that, we have a phrase in our friend group, like, don't be a jerk about it. If you're intermittent fasting and you're at a birthday party and then the birthday cake comes out half an hour after your window and you turn down the cake because you're out of your window, like, don't be a jerk
That's
about
a little
it.
much, yeah.
Like, you're being very rigid in that situation, right? And what is the fear of you participating in a very normal life event? If, like, what is your fear of doing that? Because that's actually not going to make you unhealthy. You're not going to all of a sudden gain 10 pounds. You're not going to develop some sort of disease. Like, if anything, you're actually contributing to disordered eating by not contributing, like not accepting that.
Do you think there's a little bit of fear if I let myself slip, then that's just, I'm afraid I'm gonna then delay, and it's just gonna be a snowball effect for me not sticking to this. And that could be with anything, not just food. Like that mind could be for any routine or habit that someone creates for themselves.
Sure, but
I know what you mean with food specific. Does half an hour
food-
make a
yeah,
difference?
food specific, right? Like,
Yeah.
and the rigidity around that, because like, and then it goes back to my question of, well, what is your purpose of participating in this way of eating or relating to food?
Yeah.
And is it energy? Is it aesthetic? Is it overall health? Is it whatever? And there is no magic pill. So if you're going to eat between these 8 or 6 hours in the day, you're still going to be healthy if you eat in 7 hours or 9 hours.
Yeah.
Like the ultimate goal I don't know. It's a little bit different for me, I think, in my mind.
Yeah, I'm not sure. If
Yeah.
someone's in that place, they might have their reasons for it, and it's,
Yeah.
I don't know.
I think the reasons are worth exploring.
Yeah, I think the concept is you eat during a certain amount of time throughout the day, right? So for instance, 8 hours is a standard intermittent fasting interval. And then so you're supposed to actually eat a fair amount during that 8 hour span. So you're not supposed to like have a major caloric deficit by any means. But I did actually for a while, and I felt actually, it could have been placebo, but I felt my energy levels were higher. I felt, in terms of, there's been studies done on it helps with blood pressure and blood sugar levels. And so I guess the theory is that maybe over the course of evolution, maybe we ate in a more similar fashion to that. And we didn't eat 3 square meals because, there's some, people out there saying maybe we're eating too much throughout the day, we're not burning off the energy like we should, right? But
Yeah. And everybody is different as well. Like, so
That's
if
it, yeah.
I intermittent fast, I will pass out. Like,
exactly. So I think
I-
it has to be the right fit for the right individual.
it's not going to happen.
And you should probably talk to your doctor about that. Which I have. I didn't pass it by my doctor and said, hey, what have you heard about this? And do you think it'd be a good fit for me? And let him weigh in on it. So
Yeah. But would you be a jerk about it?
probably not. No, I haven't been a jerk about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not saying that you're all jerks if you are sticking to your plan. It's
Kind
just
of
it's just
are
a
a
phrase,
little
a
bit.
phrase, a phrase that we use in our friend group.
It's the
Like,
rigidity, I guess. of it.
don't be a jerk about it. And it doesn't mean like every night that you're doing something. It literally is, hey, I'm going to someone's house for dinner, and it's taking a little longer for them to make dinner, and now it's half an hour out of your window. Are you not going to eat dinner?
Yeah.
Because it's out of it. Like, there's circumstances in life that we want to be flexible about this.
But from a
And if you have anxiety towards that, if there's anxiety towards that flexibility, then that's a red flag for me.
But from a mental health perspective, when it comes to these diets, intermittent fasting included, if it does increase energy levels and maybe helps your ability to get out there and have a balanced routine
Yeah.
and impact your sleep in a positive way, because nutrition can no doubt impact that, right?
Yeah. But
So-
those are all very good internal reasons, intrinsic reasons
Mhm.
versus I want to have a better beach body,
feeling-
or I was bullied for weight and now I don't want to be this weight anymore.
Yeah.
Like, we want the reasons to be health oriented and whatever works best for your body.
Yeah.
Versus being focused on the aesthetics,
Mhm.
if that makes sense.
Yeah, feeling healthy versus,
And being healthy, you can get your blood work done.
because in some ways there's a way, yeah, you can find that balance, right?
Yeah.
But anyways, Brian,
Yeah.
not sure. Not sure.
Just went on a little back and forth there.
You guys had a very interesting tangent there onto the varieties of that. So I find that as a clinician, and I don't specialize in eating disorders, and oftentimes if someone refers if eating disorder is like the main thing they're dealing with, I will often say, I know a couple people who are more specialized in that. Oftentimes in my work, though, I'll work with someone and find out, oh, it looks like, binge eating is part of your deal, or orthorexia is part of what you're coping with, or something like that. But as a clinician, when someone brings up an eating issue or disordered eating, as you might say, oftentimes what I'm doing is trying to figure out what that means to them, right? What is that about? What has food meant in your life? Oftentimes, because it all has a meaning, I believe. for some people, food was always a reward. Like, oh, I get to have, I did well in school, so I got to have ice cream, or I I was bad that day, so I was sent to bed without dinner. There's always some sort of meaning. Food has such a meaningful presence in our life that oftentimes we need to dissect that and see, like, what is the actual meaning of food for you, and then what does this disordered eating, what role does that play as far as kind of rebutting some of those early messages? Do you guys find that?
Absolutely. Yeah. Because it can go the other way as well, of like restrictive food when you're younger
Yeah.
into potentially some binge eating or unhealthy relationships later on, because, oh, I was never allowed treats or ice cream or whatever. And now that I'm an adult, I can do that whenever I want.
Sure. Sure.
And, yeah, absolutely.
Biggest example for me was my family was a family where there were like sugar cereals were never allowed when I was a kid in my house, right? It was Raisin Bran, or it was plain Cheerios or something like that. And when I got to college, I was like, Fruit Loops, we can do Fruit Loops now, or Lucky Charms, or all the other things. You guys probably have different names for these, or different types of
Those are all right. Yep.
horrible cereals up there. But I was like, yeah, I'm gonna go for it. Now I'm a 18-year-old adult. I'm gonna eat all the chocolate cereal I can possibly eat. And I did that for the first term, and it was like, this is it actually doesn't feel good for me. But that was all a result of the restrictions that I had when I was a kid. And it felt like almost a reward for me when I was a young adult. And like, yeah, I'm breaking the chains of my childhood. I'm getting to have this now. And I think that's something that on some level, that same sort of template is placed on a lot of things when we, I'm feeling bad, so I'm going to eat the whole pizza, or I'm going to eat the whole thing of ice cream, or whatever that might be. And then maybe I don't like the consequences, so I'm going to throw it up. So there's so many psychological components to this that in therapy that we oftentimes find ourselves teasing those things out, don't we?
Yeah, there's I don't know, there's things that would surprise you. Like I had one client who she wasn't eating, and it got to a very serious point, and I recommended right away, I too will recommend on or refer on, but she wouldn't eat because she didn't feel she deserved to eat. Right. So there's another, it's
Sure.
I didn't do enough, or I don't feel worthy of being able to eat. And that was just a really big psychological thing. But her body they actually kind of really had to get her into the hospital for a few days and stuff, because it got to a point that how serious it was. But, it's easy and this was a teenager, and it's easy to be like, okay, well, are you worried about body image and things like that? But that really actually wasn't the case for this girl.
Mm-hmm.
It was really about I'm not doing enough, or I don't deserve it. So it's just so interesting.
Mm-hmm.
You never know. And I've heard people not eating because it's just hard to swallow, or a fear to swallow, or like, there's textures, all sorts of things that could be at play for, or fear of throwing up. And so they don't want to eat because they might throw up. And you just never know.
Yeah. But I think there's often clues there stemming from an earlier time in their lives.
Mm-hmm. Or there could be other things, like this other girl, there's a lot of anxiety and things as well, or some OCD components as well. So anyways, it's usually not myself.
Because anxiety often impacts the stomach, right?
Mm-hmm.
A lot of neurons around the stomach, so can lead to feeling nausea or impact your appetite. So
I had a client
whether or not that would fall under eating disordered behavior or not could be a different ballgame too, right? Like if it's loss of appetite due to anxiety, that's not necessarily disordered eating.
Yeah.
So
what were you gonna say, Ryan?
Yeah.
I was just going to say I had a client who had a medical condition based on diet, and then and the procedures that had to take place as a result of that were so uncomfortable that they swung to the other pole so far that it was like, okay, now I'm going to only eat all these other things, and had other complications as a result of that, right? So it's kind of back to what Brooke was talking about, like the balance and the moderation there is so important. But so many times it's about the fear of, or the anxiety about, and the anxiety about being ridiculed by other people or judged by other people, or having to go through an uncomfortable medical procedure or something like that, that sends people to a really dangerous extreme that is that we, as in therapy, have to work with that.
And of course, family of origin. So taking a look at what is the family history of relationship to food.
Yeah.
Like you said, Ryan, like, was food treated as soothing or treats, or does mom hide, or dad, does a parent hide treats somewhere because treats are shameful? So
Sure.
we hide them and eat them in secrecy, or we don't tell the other parent, and like, what does that then do? Or
Right.
there is an eating disorder in one of the parents or both of them, and they might look different, right? What is the relationship to food in the house?
Such a good question, right? What was probably a good question for most of these eating disorder issues, if someone presents with that, is what was your relationship to food? What was the relationship to food presented to you as a kid?
Yeah.
And you kind of go from there. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think there's a lot of different modalities or therapeutic techniques that can support people with eating disorders. I think a lot of it is based on maybe the cause or trying to conceptualize what's going on there. But like, what are some of the main strategies? Like,
So depending the severity, if it's a formal eating disorder, then often you want like a multidisciplinary team on it, because so much of it is medical. Because obviously the stuff that you're putting in your body, like there is chemistry and things going on. So you want a medical doctor involved, and you want a dietitian involved to help with
more
that
extreme
process.
stuff, yeah.
Right? Because it's a gradual re-entry into food, and then there's like desensitization and relaxation, and like, because the person is going to experience emotional anxiety from reintroducing foods that were deemed unsafe for whatever reason, or like fearful foods. This is for people who were restrictive, but they're also, for the restricted people, going to feel like I don't know, the like physiological anxiety, not psychological anxiety, when they start introducing food. So because their metabolism is kicking on,
Yeah.
they will physically, their system is going to feel a sense of anxiety without it even being psychological, and how to work through that body discomfort. And during refeeding for persons who are restrictive, that because their systems haven't been digesting food, they go through like a crazy refeed process where they're intensely bloated, where they almost look pregnant. So you can only imagine what that does to the psyche, because here we are saying, hey, you're not going to gain weight by doing this. And then their body changes because their stomach is distended, because their system doesn't know how to digest food anymore. And so you're trying to help them work through that discomfort as well, for more extreme cases, right? So yeah, a lot of anxiety management and reframing and relaxation and questioning, and trying to keep them on track of their goals and their purpose and why they're making the change, and encouragement. And
I'll say that this is also one where, and this, again, my experience is limited when I talked about the working in a hospital and people having the feeding tubes and that sort of thing. These were adolescents, and oftentimes one of the best treatments for them was family therapy, because oftentimes with them, again, the not eating, this is mostly anorexia. The not eating was a rebellion against the parents, and like, you can't force me. You can force me to go to school, but you can't force me to eat. And so there were often these really important power dynamics going on between parent and child, and the child learning that this is one way that they can have power. I can have control over my parents by not eating, and then you're worried about me and you have to spend money on me and medical treatment, and the control component of that. So if you get them actually to work through some of those initial critical issues. And again, this is not everybody with an eating disorder. This is just the ones that I was familiar with at this point. But it could be very helpful to have families talk through some of these issues and
Huge.
work through some of those dynamics and be able to kind of extinguish some of these control problems that were maybe some of the source of the eating disorder for some of these people.
I feel like there's a lot of different treatments based on, depending on where this is coming from
Sure, exactly.
and age of life that they're in, right? Somebody in their 20s, 30s, 40s, whatever age, probably doesn't want their family to come in, even though that could be helpful. They probably don't want that to happen. So then what do we do? And that depends on what purpose is it serving. So I like the magic question, like if I wave the magic wand and I give you what you want. So if it's weight related, you're the magic weight, whatever that number is. Poof, you wake up tomorrow, you're that weight. What's different? What's fixed? What's better? Or I have the magic wand and it goes the opposite direction. What's the worst case scenario? What's going to happen if you don't achieve that? And kind of poking around a bit so that we can actually see what it's about. Because often it's not about the food. It's mostly not about, in my experience, it's Never about the food.
mostly not about the food. It might be, it's rarely about the weight, unless we're talking about something about a health risk. It's usually about something else going on internally or societally or relationally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Poor management to stress. And so it's like a stress reliever or some trauma that hasn't been dealt with. And now it's a bit of a trauma response. It's a way to dissociate. It's a way to self-soothe. It's some people with obesity, it's an armor. So if there's been abuse in the past, sexual abuse in the past, then it's a protective armor. So they won't be abused again. And that's a hard one to battle, right? To try and change that psyche, especially if it happened at a young age.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. That's true. Great stuff here. Anything else we need to cover regarding eating disorders? I don't know that we've answered all of our questions, but we've kind of,
Big topic.
it's a good topic. It's a big topic and a good topic. Well, I feel like we've at least opened the cans of worms, and maybe our listeners will have some things to think about and chew on. But if you have a concern about an eating disorder in your own life, or someone else who has maybe some disordered eating, we would certainly suggest consulting a mental health professional for that. Because that's like we said before, it's a serious condition. It's something that has more health ramifications than a lot of other things we talk about. So it's good to talk about that. So we'll wrap up for now, right? And we'll say like and subscribe on Apple, Google, Podbean, Audible, Spotify, Stitcher, or YouTube. Send your questions to our Facebook or Instagram pages. Tell a friend or two, and good night, and God save the Queen. Good night, everybody.
Good night, everybody.
Everyone.
Night.